Welcome back to another Brandon Harmonti top 10 list, but this one is only going to be about 6 because I have so many of these stories that are almost too embarrassing that I shouldn't be telling them on YouTube, that I'm probably going to make it like a part 1, 2, 3, and 4, because in reality, I probably have about 30 embarrassing stories. These are just 6 that I could think up as quickly as possible. And by embarrassing, I mean, after these things happened to me, I remember thinking, I'm probably not going to tell anybody about this. I'm probably never going to tell people these stories. But of course, I am here now on YouTube, and I'm ready to start with number 6. I got caught jumping the turnstile on a New York City subway. So back when I lived in New York City, I basically, my grandfather was giving me like $200 Metro card passes that should have lasted months, should have lasted a long time. But what I ended up doing, because these were my junkie days, was trading them in for drugs. So I never had the money to buy food. I never had the money to take the train. So for about a year, I remember there was a whole year where I lived in New York, and I even traveled from the Bronx to Manhattan every single day by jumping the turnstile. Illegal! The area of the Bronx that I lived in was right at the end of the one line. So the last 2 stops were 238th Street and I think 241st Street. So what you could do was you could walk up the steps, and while people were leaving this one exit door, as they opened it, you could just sort of shimmy in and then catch the train down to the last stop, get out, and then switch trains, go all the way to Manhattan, blah, blah, blah. Boring details, I know. But one day I had to get somewhere, and I was kind of athletic at this time. I guess I wasn't really athletic, I was just younger, and I think it's still like this. The New York subway turnstiles, it's like a thin little space, and usually you swipe your card, and then you walk through this like weird thing. It looks like a jack from the game of jacks. But if you had like proper body strength, you could just kind of walk up and jump over, but it involved crouching your knees up really high. You can make a swift jump. Usually nobody saw you, and if they did, they didn't care. They weren't getting paid enough. They weren't going to chase you. They weren't going to stop you. They were just going to be like, screw that guy. He just didn't pay $250. Now he's in. But, and I mean but, sometimes if you were tired or whatever, you could. It was hard to like cannonball your body up into a scrunch position to get over that little jack turnstile thing. Sometimes your foot would get caught at the top and would inevitably cause you to face plant. So on this particular day, I was somewhere in the Bronx. There was a ton of people just who, law-abiding citizens that just paid to get on the train. There was probably like 40 of them. It was a busy day. And I jumped, my foot got caught, and I face planted right on the ground. And when that happens to you, the last thing you want to do is just lay there and, because people aren't going to feel bad for you. And nobody did feel bad for me. And in fact, as soon as my face hit the ground, there was a big crowd of people, and a man's face who I could not see responded in that strict, warm, welcoming New York style by yelling, "That's what you get, motherfucker!" And I'm laying on the ground. What am I going to do? I just immediately just got up and started walking and pretending it didn't happen, because that was better than the shame and humiliation and embarrassment. But worse than that, after the guy yelled at me, I heard a couple people go, real talk. And then people started clapping. They started clapping. And what did I do? I walked to the end of the train station in shame, waiting for the train to pick me up. And people just kept walking by me and just looking at me and going, Fucking idiot. That's always embarrassing when that happens. And every time that had happened to me, the pain, like those New York train stations, the ground is cement. So smashing your face and every bone in your body hurts a lot, but you're so embarrassed that you have to just get up and walk away like nothing happened. All right, number 5, I got caught in the bathroom at the hospital banging my girlfriend in the psych ward. Now, before I go on and make myself look like a weird perv that's like taking advantage of my suicidal girlfriend who's in a psych ward, she was not in the psych ward for suicidal ideation. She was in there because she got pulled over and for speeding, and I think she had weed on her. And when the cop told her to get out of the car, she actually brilliantly got out of it by saying, she started yelling to the cop, "I'm going to kill myself. My life is over. I'm going to kill myself." So the cop, I think they have like a legal responsibility when somebody says they're suicidal. I think a cop has to take you to the hospital. So she actually quite brilliantly got out of that charge because the cop took her to the hospital with her purse. They left her car there. Her purse had the weed in it. And then they took her into the psych ward. Because when you say you're suicidal, they will take you and lock you up in that psych ward. So she was there for about a week. I had to wait a couple days because visiting hours were like between 6 and 8 in the evening, only a couple times a week. So at this time in our lives, we were both sort of drug addicts, unfortunately. And she called me and said, "Can you bring me something in? I'm about to get really sick." So I said, "Okay, I'll do that." So I think I promptly got the drugs, went into the hospital, checked in, went up during visiting hours, the big just day room full of people that are suicidal or trying to get into rehab. Psych wards are a sham. And I saw my girlfriend. And back during this time, if you went to the psych ward to visit, they allowed you to visit your, family member, significant other in their room. Like, you could do that back then. I think that I was responsible for ending that rule because from then on out at the psych ward, anytime a visitor came, you had to all, talk in the day room. So no more visiting your family in the room. So I went into the room with my girlfriend. We both did a line of whatever we were doing. And then we hadn't seen each other for a week. So we start, what's the word? Fooling around. This was years ago, by the way. And all of a sudden, like, this nurse knocked at the door and was like, said my girlfriend's name. And she said, "Just a minute." And we were in there. We were like, there was like a cut up straw on the sink. And like, I don't think we had clothes on. And then the nurse knocked again and said, "What's going on in there?" And my girlfriend said, "Oh, we're just in there. He's looking at my tooth. I think it may be infected." Finally, the nurse just barged in. And these bathroom doors at these psych wards, they don't shut or lock. You can just sort of close them over. So we're rushing to get our clothes on, and I'm hiding the freaking, I think I took the straw and put it in my ear like a cigarette. And the nurse opened the door, and I had just pulled my pants up or something. So we looked really sketchy, but we were not naked. So the nurse looked at my girlfriend and said, "Who the hell is he?" And she's like, "Oh, he was just my boyfriend." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm her boyfriend. She has like a rash on her leg. I was looking at it for her." And the nurse went, "Well, I thought it was like a tooth problem." And we just looked at each other and realized, like, we're caught. We're screwed. Which, by the way, what were we doing that's illegal, like, technically? Like, we were in a bathroom. And that room that she was in was legally, at that time, her domicile. So what were we, like, doing wrong? So eventually, I looked out on the hallway, and 2 big-ass security guards were just standing there. And they walked in, and they said, "Sir, can you come with us? Come with us." So I walked out, and then I looked back, and the nurses are, like, berating my girlfriend. And I'm not gonna lie, this is what makes this story embarrassing for me. These security guards were like pretty cool. They were being decent to me. I was just younger. I think I was like 19 at the time. And I've always had problems with authority. So they took me into a little room. They were being nice, being respectful. And they said, "Sir, take your shoes off." I said, "Why?" And they said, "We got to check you for drugs." And I'm like, "Dude, you're not a cop. Like, I have given you no evidence that we've been doing drugs." And of course we were doing drugs, but he said, "Sir, take your shoes off." So I, being the young douche that I truly was and still am, instead of just taking my shoes off like a good little chap and a respectful human being, I proceeded to just kind of not like with my left foot, I kind of like crushed my other shoe off and then I kicked it at the wall. And I remember security just looked at me like, "Dude, come, like, seriously, like, do you think we get paid a lot to do this?" I was just being a standoffish douche. I'm not really sure why. And they kept asking me questions, and I just kept saying, "I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I don't have to answer to you. You're not a cop." I was being so disrespectful. And finally, one of them had the audacity to say, like, "Sir, you know, like, maybe your girlfriend's in here to get some serious help that she needs, and here you are showing up in the bathroom doing God knows what. Did you ever think about that? That maybe your girlfriend is having a mental health crisis and maybe you're just an inflammation on that?" And I was like, yeah, no one, like this psych ward in this town we live in is so notorious for junkies, people who aren't even suicidal, people who just go there for a vacation, that it's been nicknamed the farm. We used to call this psych ward the farm because they didn't do anything to help anybody. Basically, you just went to the hospital, said you're suicidal, they lock you up for a week, they feed you 3 times a day, and then they have groups. Now, I'm not saying that real suicidal people don't go there, but for the most part, it's people trying to find loopholes to get immediately into rehab, and homeless people that just want to get off the street. So don't give me this bull crap about how this is like a 5-star psych hospital that's churning out healed people. No, it's the farm, and you're basically just farming mental health people like cattle. And quick side note, if you are ever stressed out, you haven't had a vacation in a long time, go to the psych ward. Go to the hospital. Tell them you're suicidal. You spend a week in there. It's awesome. You get to eat. You get to hang out with people, watch movies in your socks. You wear pajamas the whole time. It is awesome. I've been to the psych ward more times than I can count. And I go to have fun and to meet people. I've actually had like weird romance things in the hospital where I'll meet a girl and we're like together all week. We never talk again. That's the beautiful part about it. You just get to meet all these cool people. So if you're ever feeling stressed, tell the hospital you're suicidal. Anyway, to end the story, the 2 security guard guys basically thought that I was giving her drugs, which I was, and they escorted me out of the building. And I turned around and I looked at them and they said, "All right, bud, go." And this was the douchiest part. Why did I do this? I remember I just turned around and went like this and walked away, and I yelled, "I won!" Oh, God, that was the douchiest thing I've ever done. Super embarrassing. I wish I could reach out and apologize to those 2 professional security guards. I was such a douche to them. All right, let's see what we got here. This is a good one. Number 4, I butt dialed my boss during a screaming argument with my parents about whether or not I was addicted to painkillers. Now, with the emergence of smartphones, I think it's kind of rare now to butt dial people, but I do know it happens. But now with smartphones, it's not even like butt dial. Sometimes my phone just calls people. I don't even touch it. It calls people. But back in the day with the 3G phones with a lot of buttons on them, you put it in your pocket, all of a sudden you would just call people for no reason. And I think the last person you want to accidentally butt dial is your boss. Or in my case, my two bosses at a good job. I had a good job. This was during the recession, the housing crash. So I was making like $10 an hour, where all the other people my age were making like 7.25. So it was a good job. So I forgot what happened, but I was living with my girlfriend. We were both just starting to graduate from weed to like worse drugs. And my sister was living with us, and she was, of course, doing the same things we were. But something happened where I had offended her over text. Like I sent her a really cruel text or something. And for me, I have like a policy. I never really tell on people, I never snitch on people. But my sister was constantly just telling my parents about stuff. So I'm arguing with my sister. I send her a text. We're battling. And then the next thing you know, I think my mom and dad came down. Me and my girlfriend were living in this small room, and we heard a knock at the door. And we were like, what is this? And I opened it, and my dad's standing there, and he goes, Brandon. He used to always do this thing with his tongue. Come upstairs. We gotta talk. What could this possibly be? I hope my sister didn't just snitch on me for some crap she's probably also doing. So all of a sudden, I'm sitting in the living room. My dad is pacing back and forth. My mom is just sitting there looking sad. My dad says, your sister said that you are addicted to painkillers. You are snorting painkillers. And at the time, I wasn't. Or was I? I don't think I was. I was doing painkillers. I just wasn't snorting them. And I was like, how does my sister even know that? Even if I was? I don't know. And he's just grilling me. And you've watched my channel before. If you've seen my previous videos, I was an addict my whole early adulthood and 20s. So I remember on this night, my dad said one of the most profound foreshadowing things he's ever said. He's accusing me of being addicted to painkillers. And I remember he looked at me and he went, Brandon, if you're snorting painkillers right now at the age of 17, it's already over. And I remember when he said that, I was like, ooh, that makes me sound like dead. Like that, ooh, like it hurt. And then turned out he was kind of like a prophet, because it kind of was already over at this point. Finally, we're all screaming at each other. I'm accusing my dad of doing all this stuff and drinking when I was little, and he's telling me that I'm going down the wrong path. I think my girlfriend came up or no, she just left because she saw that the shit had hit the fan. She like just left. And I remember I was screaming at my dad, and all of a sudden I started crying. And I finally just said, enough! And I left the house, and I was stumbling around crying like a little girl. And I was looking for my girlfriend. I remember I was just stumbling. I shook the camera. I remember I was stumbling around, just yelling my girlfriend's name, crying like a baby. Tell her! Tell her! I shut up! And maybe I was drunk or something. I don't know why I was acting the way I did, but bottom line, was long screaming fight with my family. I'm crying. I'm looking for my girlfriend. I can't find her. So that night ended. For the next couple days, me and my family didn't even talk. Eventually, I went into work, and I remember because it was like a Saturday morning day shift, and I was washing dishes for like an entire kitchen. I was on the dishwasher shift, and both of my bosses were there at the time. And I remember thinking nothing of it, like, oh, that's in the past, blah, blah, blah. But then all of a sudden, both of my managers came up to me, and they were like, I was washing dishes, and one of them was like right behind me, practically breathing down my neck. I remember he went, Brandon, and it scared the shit out of me. I looked behind me and I was like, what? And he said, gotta come in the office. And I was like, all right. I've been to the office before. What? Can't be in trouble. I haven't done anything wrong. And by the time we got into the office, like both my managers were there, and I think their manager was there. And one of my bosses looked at me and he said, have a seat. And I was like, ooh, this feels bad. Like they caught me doing something, and I was a young buck at this time. I was probably breaking all sorts of rules. I probably had done so many justifiable things for them to fire me that I was like, this is it. This is what it's like to get fired. And everybody knows the old classic, have a seat when your boss brings you in. That's never good news. And my boss just sort of sat down in front of me like it was an interrogation. And he said, so Brandon, do you drink or anything? You a drinker? I was like, not really. They said, do you do drugs? And I went, no. And he went, what about painkillers? I was like, no. Painkiller? What is that? I've never heard of painkillers. What is that? And he went, I was going to say, it was like a cop incident. Cut the crap. But in reality, he was like, listen, Brandon, Patrick got a voicemail the other night. I was like, oh, okay. I was like, yeah, you got a voicemail? Okay. Like, what? And he went, well, we're not going to tell you about it. Let's just play it. Then he called my other boss over. Play the voicemail. So we're all sitting there, and I'm like, what could this be about? Finally, they hit play, and all of a sudden, I hear, like, my muffled voice. I hear my dad yelling, and I'm like, what is this? And I hear my dad yelling, your sister says you're snorting painkillers. Are you snorting painkillers? And I kept going. I heard my voice going, no, Dad, no, no. And at this point, I'm crying. It's embarrassing. I'm like looking at my boss, and he looks like he's trying not to laugh. And then the whole call, I butt dialed my boss, and not only that, it went to voicemail and recorded the whole thing. And of course, like I just said, the end of the recording was me crying, screaming for Taylor. Like, I was crying. I wasn't like crying like Marlon Brando in like a 50s movie, like tough guy cry. This was like bitch cry. Like I'm 7 crying because my parents are fighting. Screaming crying is what I was doing. And finally, the voicemail ended, and they look at me, and I'm just like, well, that's it. I'm screwed. I am about to lose this very good job that I happen to love. And then my boss just kind of scooted his chair closer to me, and he went, I'm going to ask you one more time. Are you on painkillers? And I said, no, dude. I was like, my sister completely made that up. We got into a fight, and my sister is notorious for snitching on me and lying about me. And they went, all right, well, you got to take a drug test. And I went, oh. I knew I was screwed because at that time I had probably just done like Xanax, Adderall, and weed and had been drinking. A bunch of stuff I'm not prescribed. So back then they had these mouth cotton swabs that are actually really unreliable, where you like put a swab in your mouth, you kind of suck on it like a lollipop. Now, when it comes to drug tests, the longest test is the hair test. Then there's like the urine test. The weakest one is the swab test because it usually only detects stuff from the past like 72 hours. And they put the swab in my mouth. They all leave the room, and I'm just like, oh, God. I'm like, I'm definitely going to fail. And finally, they come back in, and they take the swab out, and they put it in the little thing. And they're like, all right, we got to wait a couple minutes for the line to show up to show what drugs I'm on. And I'm sitting there in just complete silence. I'm like, dude, I'm about to lose this job that I love. Finally, my boss looks at it, and he goes, all right, it's done. And he starts inspecting. It was like a whole panel. It had like meth, alcohol, cannabis, psychedelics, marijuana. And what was supposed to happen was a line would show up if you tested positive for that particular drug. So I remember him looking at it, but he won't let me see it. And I'm like, I'm bluffing. I'm acting all confident. I'm like, see, what does it say? And he goes, well, there's a slight line for marijuana. And I was like, oh, God. Because you got to remember, marijuana was super illegal back then. Like, it was not socially acceptable like it is now. And finally, the big boss leaves, and it's just my two bosses. And they sit down and they look at me. And I remember my boss leaned up to me and he went, "Listen, how bad do you want this job?" And I looked at him, and I actually started tearing up a little bit. And I remember I looked at him right in the eye, and I said, I love this job. And I think a single tear came out. It was perfect. And I got let go. So it was still embarrassing because that spread around my whole work. Everybody was like, "Oh, God, that's so embarrassing. And you were crying like a little bitch." Everybody knew. I wonder if everybody heard the voicemail. So, dodged a bullet with that one, but still super embarrassing. Super bad luck. That's the kind of stuff that happens to me a lot, unfortunately. Alright, the final two are about shoplifting, which is something I used to do constantly. I don't do it anymore because I don't really have any reason to do it. But back during this time, early 2010s, my girlfriend was the one who got me into shoplifting. She shoplifted all the time, and she was like a young woman. She had like tattoos and black hair and dressed like a punk. So if she's shoplifting in a store, anybody watching the cameras is obviously going to tune into her. And plus, she had a huge, big purse. So she used to get caught stealing all the time because she would go to like the makeup aisle of a store. She would kind of just mosey around, pick stuff up, look at it, pick stuff up. Then she would find the thing she wanted and she would grab it. She would kind of look up like a sketch ball, kind of go around the corner into the other aisle and just sort of dip it into her purse, which in my opinion is the worst way to ever steal, because logistically you're giving them time to, one, find out you're stealing, two, call security to like wait at the door to get you before you leave out. So my philosophy as a man, and this is how a man steals, is when you're walking into the store, you already know what you're going to steal. You have it in your mind. You walk in, you grab it, you put it in your pocket, and you just walk out. You try not to look sketchy, but logistically, if you steal that way, there's not enough time for security to find out you're stealing, to call the guards, to really even bust you logistically. Like, the only way they can get you is if they got you on camera and they could track you down to your house, but they're way too lazy to do that. If they call the cops, the cop ain't gonna drive for 4 miles outside of town to come bust you. This just never happens. And I never got really arrested for shoplifting, so that goes to show how well that philosophy works. I was living in New York during this time, and I lived in the Bronx, right at the 1 train. There was, I think it was like a little mini Broadway. It was one of those trains that wasn't underground, but it was above ground. There were all these little thrift stores and restaurants. And there was this one store, and I think it was owned by like Filipinos or Dominicans, which, by the way, Dominicans are some scary people, and they stick together with family. They're pretty tough people, Dominicans. And there was this store that had like sushi, the way that you see sushi in grocery stores. It's like nice and packed up. And of course, I was broke at this time, but sushi is my favorite food. I'm pretty sure in New York, that sushi was like $16 for like a roll of sushi. So I was constantly just nipping in there, following my philosophy of get in, steal, get out. But I think at this time they were probably starting to get used to seeing me and never walking up to the cashier. So they probably knew my face. So I walked in and I did what I had done many a times, which is I walked up to the sushi, grabbed it, probably had a big coat on, and I promptly stuffed it down into my pube area, and it was being held in by my jeans and belt. So grab the sushi, put it in, don't even bother to look around, start walking out. And as I'm walking out, I'm walking by all these cashiers and I can hear dinging and there are people standing in line. I looked over and I saw this guy give some other guy like a nod. He was wearing like a big, like, what are those things called? Aprons. And I look at him and I'm like, ooh, time to get out of here. So I'm walking out and I just hear behind me, "Hey!" And I start like walking really fast, and before you know it, I'm like in the run position. This guy, like, he must have known some sort of martial art, like got me in this freaking headlock. And then I kept trying to walk away. So another big Dominican dude ran up and just tackled me to the ground. And I remember two things. My face hitting the ground as people were walking in, watching me get busted for shoplifting. And two, as I hit the ground, you got to remember the sushi is like resting in my pubis area. I could hear the sushi crunch, so I probably like smushed it. And all of a sudden, people on the street start like crowding around. A lot of my embarrassing cringe stories have to do with me getting caught doing something stupid or illegal and a crowd forming around to shame me and laugh at me. And if you've ever seen The Wire, there's a scene where Leo Fitzpatrick gets caught trying to like sell fake counterfeit bills to buy dope, and they kind of catch him, and he starts pleading and begging immediately. Bow tie is all messed up now. So I started acting exactly like that. I think I whipped up a fake cry. I was like, "Oh please, man, I'm just hungry, man. I'm sorry. Just take it back. I don't want it, man. I'm sorry. Just please don't call the police." Because that was my biggest fear. I would take embarrassment and cringe over getting the police called on me anytime. And the guy like grabbed me by the jacket and picked me up, slammed me against the wall. And I had one of my granddad's, like, probably freaking 1940s big jackets on. And I remember him going, "Oh, open your jacket, open your jacket." And I zipped it down, and I was like, "Nothing, I don't have it. Like, there's nothing in here." And they started patting me down. And he went, "Where's the sushi?" And I was like, it's down here. And I started to grab for it. But he reached down into my pants and pulled it out. I'm pretty sure there may have been like a pube or two attached to it. I don't know. It was like nesting in my pubes like a baby bird. And I remember by then I'm super embarrassed. Everybody's looking at me. The cashiers stopped doing their job to just like get a peek at me getting caught stealing. And I just kept saying, "Dude, I'll never do it again. Just please, just let me go." And he went, "Never come back here again." And by the way, these guys, they were like Yakuza or something. Like, they were acting like they were like in the Dominican Mafia. These weren't security guards. These were like some neighborhood tough guys. And I said, "I'll never come back here again." And the last thing I remember is he looked up. And I remember thinking, what is he looking at? Like, and I kind of looked up too. And then he went, poof, and he punched me in the gut. And I just remember being like, "Blah!" And he completely knocked the wind out of me. And I fell over, and I kept trying to get up. It's just hard when you get the wind knocked out of you. Like, I kind of just stumbled out and kept falling on the ground until eventually I got out, and then I just ran for whatever reason. I was like, maybe they did call the cops, and I'm not trying to catch a case today. All right, number one, this is the last one, and unfortunately, this is another getting caught stealing story. But this is more of a cool story than an embarrassing one. But still, it follows the core tenets of cringe and embarrassment in the sense that I got caught, and everyone around me was just watching in pity. And people in New York, they hate seeing shoplifters. People who aren't shoplifters hate seeing shoplifters because they pay for their crap like proper Americans. And here I am, a young junkie thief. So me and my friend Mike were living in the Bronx at this time. We were both jumping the turnstile all the time. But he was smart enough not to do what I did, where I would jump and cannonball my body over. He would actually climb under and sometimes get stuck, which was more embarrassing than face planting, in my opinion. And at that time, I was a big fan of, one, Red Bull, and two, stealing Red Bull, because as we all know, Red Bull comes in like a very tiny little can, very easy to conceal in a pocket. So there was a Walgreens right next to the one train, and I remember I said, I was so confident in my stealing at this time that like every time before we got on the train, I would say stuff like, hold on, Mike, give me a second. Let me hit this Walgreens real quick. And by hit, I meant steal. God, this is bugging me, man. So I walked in, and of course, and I'm pretty sure security knows to look out for this, is back then when I would walk in with the intention to steal, I would have my phone up to my ear, and I would talk like I was having a conversation. In reality, this probably drew more attention to me than anything. But as I was walking into this Walgreens, like, you know how Walgreens are, like, you know, the outlying shape of them. You kind of walk in, the cashiers are here, and then the drinks are on the wall. So I'm walking towards the wall. Of course, I know exactly where the Red Bull are. I remember hearing years ago that, and I learned this training working at, like, gas stations. They would teach you this in training, is if somebody walks in, make eye contact with the customer, because once you make eye contact with a customer, there's a 90% chance that they're going to be too cowardice to steal. And I could see that. You don't want to walk in and look at somebody and then steal. But me, I was young and cocky and confident. I remember I walked in, I was talking on the phone. I looked over, there's this black guy. He looked bored to tears working there. Just cashier or whatever. And I looked at him, and I think I kind of nodded. And I think he was immediately not buying my BS. So I start walking towards the Red Bull, and by that time I'm out of sight. I don't think he can see me anymore. So I open the fridge, reach up, grab the smallest Red Bull, which I think is about 8 ounces, put it in my pocket. But I'm not wearing jeans. I'm wearing, like, khaki pants, so the Red Bull's kind of flopping around in my pants a bit. And I'm walking out the store, and I know I have to pass this black employee again. And I'm on the phone walking, and I just remember the guy looked down at my pants, and he looked really confused. Like, he totally knew I just pocketed a Red Bull, and I just walked out. And so before I go any further, there's like a law, and I think it's in most states, where if you steal something from a store and you make it out the front doors, employees are not allowed to legally chase you and apprehend you. They're only allowed to do that when they catch you in the store. So in my mind, I'm like, well, I'm free because I'm out of the store. But here's the thing. I know that. I know they're not allowed to chase me out and apprehend me. But do they? Like, they're making, like, minimum wage. I'm pretty sure they don't teach that in training. So you got to remember, most employees of a store you're stealing from, they don't know the laws, the ins and outs of shoplifting law the way that shoplifters do. So I'm about 15, 20 steps from the store. I've already cracked this Red Bull open, drinking it, talking to my friend Mike. We're getting ready to get on the train. And then all of a sudden, I'm walking, sipping a Red Bull. I felt like a plunge from my back. And all of a sudden, all the Red Bull just squirts in my face. And once again, like all these cringe stories, pretty sure I face planted. And I remember when my head hit the ground, all I saw was just a flash of white for a second. And I didn't know what was going on, so I got up real quick. And as I was turning around, this guy has me in a headlock, and I can't see who he is, and he's grabbing my shirt, and I'm like struggling to get away. I can't even see the guy, and finally I yank, and his fingernails just tore at my neck, and I'm pretty sure you can still see a scar from that incident. It might be hard to see. It's like right here, I think. And I look, and it's the black African guy who saw me steal and is trying to be like a good Samaritan or whatever, wannabe security. So he's like tearing my shirt at this point, and he's got me in like a half Nelson. And I'm yelling for my friend Mike. I'm like, Mike, and I hear my friend go, Mike. Mike, he went, yeah. And I remember it was like a scene in Sopranos, like I'm in a headlock. My little crony is with me. And I remember yelling, what are you doing, Mike? Hit this prick. And my friend Mike, I saw he had his hands up like he was about to punch the guy. I think there's an exact scene in Sopranos where there's a scuffle with where Paulie and the Russian guy, and I remember Paulie yells, "Shoot this prick! Shoot this prick!" And I think I'd been watching that like the day before, so I'm acting like a mobster. Mike, hit this prick! And he wouldn't let go of me. And finally, a good Samaritan walked up. This young, it looked Jewish guy walked up and he went, "Whoa, whoa, 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 what's going on here?" And the African guy finally kind of lets me go, and I'm like, and the African guy looks at the Jewish kid and he goes, "He steal! He steal! He no pay for that Red Bull! He shoplifter! Shoplifter!" And the kid went, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa." And he pulled out his wallet and he said, "How much was that Red Bull?" And the African guy was going, he was like, "No, no, no. Come with me in the store. Come on." And the kid went, "No, no, dude, how much was it? Was it $5? Let me give you $10. Let this kid go. He's a stupid kid." And of course, I'm like, I got my pom-poms out for this random guy that's saving my life. I'm like, "Yeah, listen to him. Take his money. Take his money." And finally, I don't even know if they took the Jewish kid's money. I can't remember. But the manager lady came out, and she's like, "What's going on here?" And she's kind of berating the African coworker guy. And he's like, "Oh, he was stealing. He stole that Red Bull. He did not pay for it." And she went, okay. How much was it?" And the Jewish kid went, "Listen, it was $5. Take this $10. Please just let the kid go." This kid was like my guardian angel at this point. And I remember the lady was going, no, we're not just going to let you go. You have to come to the store. We're not going to call the cops," which I didn't believe, by the way. She said, "You're going to have to come into the store. We're going to have to take your picture. And you are banned from this store forever." And I was like, ain't none of that going to happen. I was like, one, look at my neck, dude. I was like seriously bleeding. Like there was blood dripping. And I remember later I looked at my belly button. It dripped all the way down to my belly button. And I was like, your underling coworker just assaulted me. Like, and I started going on about law that I'm not even sure exists. Like, maybe this is just like BS wives' tales from thieves. But I was like, he assaulted me. And by the way, if I do steal and I make it out of your store, you are not allowed to chase a thief and yank him back into the store. I'm like, I could sue you guys. I kept saying that because at this point, I'm not going to sue. But I think that they're going to try to force me back into that store to go through the embarrassment of like getting my picture taken. And by the way, I didn't trust that they weren't going to call the cops. I thought they were going to call the cops. So she was like, "Sir, you have to come in." And I was like, my dad is a lawyer. And you guys are going to get so sued. I was like, look at my neck. Of course I'm bluffing. I don't believe in doing any of that. So finally, they took the Jewish kid's money. They went back inside. And I got away scot-free. But I remember I was mad at my friend Mike. I was like, "Dude, there was 2 of us and 1 of him. Why didn't you help me?" And he was like, "Dude, that was like a freaking buff African immigrant. Like, you and I are both like 110 pounds soaking wet. What do you think? He would have kicked both of our asses. Like, get real." And I was like, yeah, he's got a point. He's got a point. So that's it. This video ended up being 50 minutes. I have to cut it down a good amount. But that is 6 of the most embarrassing things that have ever happened to me. To be honest, that's low tier. I've had way more embarrassing things, but I need to think of more of them and write them down. I'll probably make a part 2 or 3 or 4. Hey, if you like this video, subscribe, hit a like, give this channel a like. Another thing I'm doing is I'm putting these annoying little thumbs up things in the video because I need to grow this channel fast. Check the description for the links to my other channels and my podcast. There's going to be tons more videos like this on the channel. Music, story times, rants, top 10s. Thanks for watching.